the nation is the focal point of collective identity. So long as they are safe within the symbolic placenta, the people have no need to doubt. Behold the wages of hubris. The third division. Mankind's Third World War. 20 XX AD. As it rode the wave of economic expansion that accompanied its shifting national zeitgeist, the small island nation of Japan started down the path of free militarization, a totalitarian national ideology, control over the citizenry that all but began in the womb, education geared toward producing loyal soldiers, a system optimized for war. Or so the people believe. But the nightmare of war far exceeded their predictions, and the terrible scars left in its aftermath made recovery a distant hope indeed. After the war, the survivors, desperate for hope, took the drastic measure of splitting Japan in two. East and West. Under the direction of their respective leaders, each side began to rebuild. These efforts focused at first on the rural areas, which had sustained a relatively little damage, before proceeding toward the cities, which had suffered by far the worst. This period was marked by a number of dramatic policy changes, all geared toward cutting ties with the past and establishing a new national ideology. Most iconic among this was the rechristening of the former capital, dubbed the Old Lands. This blessed city was consigned to the oblivion of memory. Everyone believed that this would clear the way for a better future. 5 years passed. Alas, the cracks from which all had averted their eyes grew wider in the interim, soon threatening to swallow the nation whole. The sudden shift in ideology had left the citizens bewildered. The abandonment of the former capital had transformed the old lands into a hotbed of a crime. The road was too widespread for the government to contain, and the country was still divided into East and West. One of the two sides would eventually govern all of Japan, but unable to guess at the burdens involved, both hesitated to move forward. Additionally, each side held a different vision of how the nation should be reborn. Reunification talks fell apart again and again, and so the future hung on the brink. The brief glimpse of light at the end of the tunnel had begun to recede into darkness. death. He thought it beautiful. He remembered body bags, human shapes swathed like babes in their gentle embrace. He remembered lowering their sabers to reveal the unmoving objects within. That was how the soldiers had always looked when they returned to the shelter. He thought them beautiful. To him, they seemed to be asleep. What was that anyway? The cessation of function. The heart stops, the lungs stop, the brain stops. The body falls into an endless sleep. Was that not what it meant to die? But was that all? Was there nothing more? He himself was in no hurry to die. But nor did he have any particular attachment to life. Even if he abruptly died in his sleep, that would be just fine. He tried to imagine himself fighting desperately to survive. What would be the purpose of that? What could he hope to accomplish by staying alive? What was that difference between life and death, aside from the cessation of one's bodily functions? He pondered these things constantly, even while watching his fist tear through flesh to shatter the hard bone beneath. A pleasant numbness spread from Akira's knuckles to his brain, like bubbles in a carbonate drink. The man's knees buckled, and he sank slowly to the ground. The unnatural silence, like a silent movie playing in slow motion, broke the instant he collapsed. All at once, there rose a storm of noise and more noise. Rough voices clashed in disharmony, stinging Akira's ears. The man had been huge, both taller and heavier than Akira. He had looked down at Akira with eyes that pitied the ant he was about to cross beneath his heel. But that hadn't lasted for long. The match had ended almost as soon as it began. Now the bitter howls of those who'd lost their bets mixed with the cries of those thrilled by the victory. Some approached with repellent smiles, asking for comments like television reporters. Countless fists smacked him on the shoulders, as if to laud the return of an old war buddy. Naked light bulbs swayed in the dimness, conspiring with the shadows to make the spectators stand out oddly. The crowd was gathered in one corner of a filthy backlot. All were young, though they ran the gamut from those who had never seen blood before to those who had seen too much. They were all here for one reason, to witness a competition of strength. Shaking the blood from his fists, Akira pushed his way through the onlookers and headed for the cool depths of the alley, as if to flee their clinging eyes. He did not even spare a glance for the man he had just defeated. The air he inhaled was chilly. He pulled his jacket a little tighter around his neck. As the noise of the crowd receded, Akira felt like he was stepping into a different world. About 3 blocks away was the spot where Blaster participants gathered to rest from the fighting. Someone had scrawled "restroom" in red marker on the wall. Several youths were already there, smoking or drinking cheap booze as they chatted amongst themselves. Most were participants in tonight's contest, but there were also among them retired fighters who had come to boast both past glory. To an outsider, they would look like a gang of delinquents, which was more or less precisely what they were. Akira walked past the others longing on the roadside, then sat down in his usual spot by the back wall. As he enjoyed the feeling of the cool asphalt through his jeans, he felt a sigh escape his lips. That last opponent, he was nothing. Akira hadn't even broken a sweat. This is how it had been for a while now. No one had been able to so much as bloody his lip. Which was why the more fired up his audience got, the more empty he felt inside. He was there for the prize money, nothing more. Letting out on their side, Akira leaned his head against the wall and cast his eyes up at the sky. Tonight, there was a lovely full moon. After World War III started, it had been years before people could look at the sky. During the war, and in the immediate aftermath, most of the population had lived in colossal underground shelters. There, children were separated from their parents and raised to be perfect soldiers. They were taught to kill, to die. Glory to those who slay our enemies. Your life belongs to your country. Yet, the war ended before those children ever saw battle, and the next thing they knew, the very same nation that had called on them to kill and die was asking them to forge a bright, loving future. The reversal was all too reckless and all too sudden. It began with the forced establishment of new family units. Normally, one might think that the children would have been returned to the parents from whom they'd been taken, but this was not the case. Parents and children who had never met were assigned to one another at random and forced to live beneath one roof as a family. Of course, there was no way that these families could function. Abuse, neglect, and violence ran rampant. The children had been taught nothing except how to fight. How were they supposed to feel? What was love anyway? They had no one to teach them the answer. Their parents were hardly up to the task. In their confusion, the children turned to battle. They had been taught that defeating one's enemy was the greatest possible glory, but the war had ended before any of them could put their training to use. These children needed a place to test their strength. How did it feel to fight for one's life? What could you see at the edge of that? As if pursuing the answers to those questions, the lost children clashed with one another on the streets. Soon, this became known as blaster fights. The governments of Japan deliberately turned a blind eye, although they passed new laws to make it plain that deaths would not be tolerated. And so, blaster thrift. It began on the CFC side and quickly spread to Nikoren as well. Rules took shape, and soon both group and individual fights were being held. Japan's youth were starved for battle, and Akira was one of them. At the sound of approaching footsteps, Akira lowered his gaze from the moon. Two lanky silhouettes stopped in front of him.
Yes, Akira!
The man with the yellow mohawk, which Akira thought made him look like a rooster, grinned and raised his hand.
Yeah.
The other one, a sickly looking guy with long black hair, peered down at Akira with a smirk. Each of them was holding a bottle of booze. Akira had a few acquaintances, but these were two of them. They'd been hanging around him ever since he started coming here. He'd ignored them at first, but they kept coming, and before he knew it, talking to them had become a regular thing.
アキラまた買っちゃったんだって。しかも一発系よ。あんたほんと強えよな、まったく。
Ace, the one with the mohawk, approached with his distinctive one-leg dragging gait, then plopped down beside Akira.
見たかったね。エースのせいで間に合わなかったけどよ。
D, the long-haired one, stood in front of them with a wide grin on his face. After giving D the finger, Ace triumphantly thrust his bottle at Akira. It looked like beer, with a red label.
なんだと思う？
Akira had no interest in booze. He shook his head brusquely, causing Ace to purse his lips.
なんだよ、もう祝いがいねえな。こいつはな、ちょっとやそっとじゃ手に入らねえレアもんのビールちゃんよ。高いんだぜこれ。アキラが勝ったっつうから行きつけんとこ頼み込んで出してもらったわけよ。つったってアキラ飲まねえんじゃなかったっけか。
Rocking back to look up, Ace waved his hand dismissively.
いいの。こういうの気持ちが肝心だっつうだろ。アキラの勝利のために奮発したっつう俺様の友達思いの心だな。ラストに乾杯。
Ignoring Ace, D raised his bottle high.
あ、てめえ人の話聞けよ。話終わってからやれってんだよバカ。何勝手に乾杯してんだよ。
Ace leaned forward, eyes bulging, as he lashed out at D.
なげんだもん。飽きた。ほら早く乾杯しろよ。
Ace shot a glare at the smirking D, then cleared his throat a bit.
じゃあまあ気を取り直してロストの勝利に乾杯。
Ace hoisted his bottle overhead, clinked it against this and downed the beer in one gulp. Loss was Akira's alias in Blaster. No one remembered who'd come up with the name. Somewhere along the way, it had simply become the norm. Akira didn't mind. Names meant little to him.
うまいなやっぱ。
D shrugged his shoulders and took tiny sips as Ace laughed heartily, breath reeking of alcohol.
今回のは見れなかったけど、相手って結構な肉だるまだったんだろ。どうせまた顔色の一つも変えずサクッと倒しちゃったんだろうな。
In the sector, area, Ray, Akira, Loss was known to all as the undefeated champion of the individual boats. Once upon a time, he had looked forward to these fights but the enthusiasm of those early battles had vanished long ago, and now not even embers remained. These days, he approached every fight with the same sense of a foregone conclusion. He was there to earn a living, that's all, and because there was nothing else he wanted to do. He wasn't even all that interested in the prize money, as long as he had enough to meet his meager expenses. Akira had no dreams, no goals. He stayed alive only because he felt neither the need nor the inclination to die.
しかもよ、また蹴ったんだって？今度はなんだっけかな、ほらなんか結構有名なでっかいとこ。
本堂グループ？
そうそう、それそれ。せっかくのお誘いをよ。
Ace smacked the palm of his hand with his fist and jabbed an index finger at D. From time to time, corporations scouted blaster fighters who had earned recognition on the circuit. By and large, they were connected to the underworld, yakuza, or private security. But in this day and age, having someone to pay your way was worth a lot, once fighters jumped at the chance. If you were good enough, you might even get an offer from the world of pro sports. Unsurprisingly, Akira had no interest in any of this. He'd need more than one hand's worth of fingers to count the invitations he'd refused up until now. The Hondo Group recruiter had looked as if he'd been trying to advertise his yakuza ties. Akira recalled his gaudy, nouveau riche dress, but not his face or what he'd said. Akira was only here because he didn't mind fighting. He'd never given any thought to his future. If he ever ran out of prize money, he supposed that he could always find work as a day laborer. He saw no need to think any further ahead. Ace and D, who would ultimately keep the conversation going, whether or not Akira had anything to say, were actually rather well built despite their gangly looks. Their nails were black, with dirt and grime, and their knuckles bore the telltale scars of a street fighter. Was the money really worth the sweat and blood they shed? Either way, there was no shortage of blaster participants looking to get rich, or just let off some steam.
俺たちで組んで優勝狙っちゃおっか。最強サンバカギ兄弟とかってチーム名にしてさ。
ネタチームかよ。
This bottle was almost empty, even though he'd been taking little sips, and he waved it as he joked around. Ace laughed brusquely. They were nearing full-on drunkenness.
最強っつえばさ、ペスカコシカみてえになってみてえよな、いっぺん。
Ace wiped tears of laughter from the corners of his eyes as he murmured dreamily. Bessie? Akira wasn't familiar with the name. It must have shown on his face.
あ？
え？うっそ。
As soon as they noticed Akira's confusion, the two friends' eyes went wide.
アキラまさかペスカコしか知らねえの？ガキでも知ってるぜ、多分。
ありえねえ、超ありえねえ、ブラスターのチャンピオンか。さすがだぜ、仙人見て。
Akira's cold, feeling like an idiot. Even he knew when he was being made fun of. As if it pleased him to have one up on the champion, Ace put on a gleeful smirk and waved his index finger from side to side.
親切な俺様がボスに説明してやるや。ペスカコシカってのはな、通称コート率いるちょっと前に一世を風靡したエリアゴースト出身のチームや。そらもう今のアキラみたく連戦連勝負け知らずでさ、向かうところ敵なしそう最強チーム。
Ace balled his hands into trembling fists, as though recalling the excitement it felt back then. Come to think of it, Akira had a feeling he'd heard the name before, but he couldn't recall where.
まあ、凶悪の凶を取って最強とも呼ばれてたけどな。
This interjection wiped the grin off Ace's face.
悪名高いことでも有名だったからな。めちゃくちゃひでえこととか平気でやってたもんな。
で、そういう凶悪なことをいっぺんやってみたいと。
は？
D grinned maliciously, crossing his arms.
誰もんなこと言ってねえだろ。そんぐらい強くなってみてっつってんだよこのタコ。
Ace hold, waving his hands theatrically.
いて。
Ace slammed his fist down against the top of D's head.
警察と勇敢に戦った俺の武勇伝を聞かなかったのかお前は。お前こそな、その薄気味悪いロン毛とっとと切りやがれってんだ。
Patting his injured right knee, which he claimed often had been wounded in righteous battle against the forces of tyranny, Ace reached out and seized hold of D's hair.
だってバイクでひったくりやったとこ見つかって追っかけられて事故っただけじゃねえかよ。どこら辺をどうすれば武勇になるんだよ。
D wailed, pulled forward by his hair. Leaning against the wall, Akira watched their antics with a detached eye. He didn't mind being around these guys. They did whatever they wanted, regardless of how he responded. It was much more relaxing than being with people who were always coaching his reaction. He didn't care to have others tell him where he belonged. If they thought he was going to play their game of superficial friendship, then they were doomed to be disappointed. He'd never said so out loud, but apparently, it showed in his demeanor. People picking baseless fights with him had become just another part of his day-to-day life.
おいアキラ、なんとか言ってやれよこいつにさ。一番バカなのはエースだよな。
With his parted hair captured on both sides, this showed Akira a desperate look. Akira didn't mind hanging out with these guys, but of course, everything had its limit. Sighing, Akira reluctantly opened his mouth.
安心しろよ。似た者同士だから。
え？
That was probably the first thing Akira had said since coming to this sector. As if they'd planned it, both of them looked at Akira at the same time with the same expression. They even mirrored each other in how their shoulders slumped, crestfallen. This drew laughter from the scattered onlookers who'd wandered in during the show. Looking up the sky, Akira returned to his thoughts. Even if the moon vanished one day, things will be just fine. Even without its lights to guide them, those who crawled the earth would find some way to get by. In this place, there was rest from the strain of living. That was why Akira kept finding himself here. Soon, Ace and D recovered, and the sound of their banter once again filled the comforting darkness.